It is teacher quilt season. And teacher quilt season is really exciting because who better to share the love with than the teachers who take amazing care of your children all year long? So we have 3 teachers that we're making quilts for. The first teacher is really special. She's taught all 3 of our kids. She is absolutely fabulous. And our youngest has her this year. So it'll be our last year to give her a really special quilt. And she happens to love Disney. So we kind of hunted around and found this cool quilt by Sterling Quilt Co. And or this cool pattern by Sterling Quilt Co. And it's just classic, these cute classic Minnie and Mickey blocks. And when I saw the original picture, I was like, oh, these are so cute, but I wanted to keep it really classic. And so we got some really fun white on white, and this just has a little X pattern on it. A really fun little background that'll have, you know, that teeny bit of interest. I love a tone on tone. I think that's super fun. And then for the black, we got a couple of different options, and these look so similar, and they really are quite similar, but I wanted to keep these really bold so they pop against the background. And again, just super classic, but with a tiny bit of interest. So we didn't go just, you know, plain black. We didn't do any solids for this quilt. So we've got a teeny little dot pattern. And then this one is like kind of X's. So that one's really fun. And then for the red, I got 3 reds. I really didn't need 3 reds. I doubt we'll even use all of one of these cuts of red, but the first one I got was this nice deep red with a black dot. The second one, back to the X's. Of course, the X's are so fun. And then this one just felt so traditional Minnie Mouse that we had to go with that one too. So really excited to get started with this Minnie and Mickey quilt the pattern is called Take Me to the Magic Again. And it'll be fun to watch this come together for one of our favorite teachers. There are a couple different layouts in this quilt pattern, and partially just because of time, we're starting on these quilts in March. I think we're gonna do the larger block layout and just alternate maybe Mickeys and Minnies so we have an equal amount of each. And those are 18 by 18 blocks, the larger ones are. So those are nice big blocks. Those will come together really quickly. All of our block cutting is done and labeled, and now it's time to start putting these blocks together. We got everything cut, working on ironing back our little snowballs. I started on the Mickey heads and am just chain piecing them kind of step by step, which is a little bit dangerous because you don't really know if you're doing each step right. You kind of just hope and assume so. But that's our block so far. So I know a lot of people, Penny included, the Penny from Penny's Party, like to make one block start to finish to just, you know, make sure that everything's cut correctly and that they kind of understand the process, which is probably really smart, honestly. I just don't. I just assume everything's going to be okay and that these pattern designers are just going to take good care of me and that my brain's going to be on the ball enough to to follow the pattern properly. So I always enjoy a specific quilt that's being made for a specific person for two reasons. The first one is it's always fun to think about that particular person throughout the process and just, you know, either, you know, what you love about them or how much they're going to enjoy the quilt you make them, or, you know, whatever it is. But it is fun to kind of reminisce. And this particular teacher is just so talented. And I think the thing that is more impressive than anything else, she typically ends up with a bigger class than the other teachers in her grade. She's got a ton of experience. I believe she's been there since that school opened, which is awesome. But she always, you know, is really good with tough kids that maybe are either struggling academically or just behaviorally. They're just, you know, energetic kids, which a lot of them at that age are. And she always does great with kids like that, but which is probably all kids if we're honest. But here's her superpower. Her superpower is really meeting every single kid where they are at academically, emotionally, and really helping to build their confidence and really helping to just encourage them to be like their best self. And I love that. I do not think there can ever be enough people around your kids who just love and encourage them and try and help them be their best selves. And so anyway, fun to kind of think about her and some of her major strengths as a teacher. Here's the other thing that's really fun about this is you get to reminisce about Disney. And who doesn't like thoughts about Disney? If you have not left your kids home for a Disney trip, not that the kids aren't fun, but a girls' trip or an adult trip to Disneyland or Disney World is so fantastic. Totally different experience, and really, really fun. Just a whole different pace than when you're, you know, pushing a stroller around Disneyland. So, all right, we've got our next little side pieces on. Gonna iron those back. And so far, this pattern is really reminding me of like a Lori Holt pattern with all of the little parts and pieces that you kind of feel like, who the heck knows how this is all gonna work out, but it does. And I kind of love that approach to patterns. Obviously you can see a Lori Holt quilt behind me because I love Lori Holt. Although I always, can we just agree that when Lori Holt tells us to cut a 3/4 inch square, you do have to be mad at Lori Holt for just a minute. I'm sorry, Lori Holt, we love you. But then you see how cute the 6-inch blocks turn out and you're like, fine, we love you again. Because they're so cute. So cute. These are all almost ironed back. And that's where we'll stop for today. You cannot make a whole quilt in a day. You totally can. Not this quilt, probably. Although it's not hard. The instructions are very, very good. Very easy. The cutting instructions were great. I don't think that I followed them all exactly. I probably would have had a little less waste left over if I had, but it wasn't bad. But I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Mickey blocks, and we'll do 6 mini blocks. So we'll just alternate them on rows, and then we'll have 4 rows of 3 blocks each, and they'll just be alternating Mickey, Minnie, Mickey, Minnie. And it's going to be really quite plain color-wise, but depending on how the layout looks, maybe we'll use some of the extra red for like a little inner border or something to give it a little more pop. So progress for today. So I'm getting ready to sew the next step of these cute Mickey ears. And I showed you this cute white on white fabric, which I love a tone on tone. The challenge is a lot of times, of course, after the quilt is already totally sewn, you realize that you flipped some of your tone on tone the wrong way. So fun little trick, if you get a black light flashlight, you can shine it onto the tone on tone and you'll actually see the pattern on the right side. Whereas if you flip it around, you actually don't see the pattern as much on the back side. So if you just set it down on a plain surface, it'll kind of fluoresce on the printed side. So make it a tiny bit easier for you to get the correct side of the fabric sewn. So this block is for the ears, which means that each of these get a snowball on opposite corners. And I don't know about you, but that just seems like unpicking in the making. So I think what I'm gonna do is separate them into 2 separate piles so that I can do one pile one way and another pile the other way and just pray that they turn out correctly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's a good sign. All right. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These go on the outside corner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on the opposite corner. And fingers crossed that we can keep this shenanigans together. I did just see on a tutorial from Missouri Star that when they are snowballing corners, they'll go like just a hair outside of where you're gonna fold over and press so that your press actually ends up right on the line. It makes sense. I'm not really that kind of sewer to like stress about those types of things. I don't unpick a lot. I don't really stress if things aren't perfectly square. Because perfection sucks the joy out of life. So that's just not how I roll. However, if you are one of those sewers that really wants everything to turn out square. I thought that was a very good insight. And part of what I love in sewing and just life in general is everybody's got a different approach. And that's kind of what makes the world beautiful. And kind of what makes art, is that no two people see the world the same. So, just making sure I wasn't leaving my tiny human somewhere, which is bound to happen at some point. I haven't done it yet, but the last thing you want is to leave your tiny human somewhere because you were sewing. I don't think that flies as well as an excuse. Okay, so we're on the second to last one here. And then we're gonna double check these, make sure we actually got them on opposite sides like they're supposed to be. And then we can trim. Trim and press back. Let's trim or cut all these little chain piece threads. All right, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That's good starting. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got, let's see, I think they go this way. 6 snowballed on that corner and 6 snowballed on that corner. So we're good to trim. Next step is attaching our ears to our body. But we're snowballing our Mickey heads, or excuse me, our mini heads with small snowballs on the top side and big snowballs on the bottom side. And I've brought all of my treasures and hope that I didn't forget anything, because there's nothing worse than being halfway through a project and realizing you forgot something. Blocks and the mini blocks. They're so cute. Mickey and Minnie quilt is all done, complete with borders. And I did add the black borders and the red cornerstones around the whole thing, and then the 6-inch wide border around the outside, just to make it kind of feel a little more complete. And I wanted a little bit of a bigger size. I have to ask for forgiveness because in the midst of getting all the tiny humans done with school and end of year programs and spelling bees last week of school, I don't know why, and everything else that comes with it, I totally neglected to take a final picture or video of the Mickey quilt. Ugh, I'm kicking myself. But I do have to share the sweet email that I got from the teacher that the Mickey quilt went to. She said, "I was in awe this morning when your son presented me with the most fabulous quilt I have ever seen. I cannot thank you enough for the gift and for sharing your talent with me, and for knowing me so well that the quilt matches one of my favorite things." That was on my kids. They pay attention. "I will cherish this quilt forever. I don't quilt, but I come from a family of quilters, and I often help my mom square up the edges of her quilts and hand sew the binding on. I know the time, expense, and love that is put into a quilt. This is truly a work of art. I love the stars and the hidden Mickeys in the stitching design," because we did this adorable Mickey quilting pattern in like, the thread had a little bit of a sparkle to it almost, so it offset really cool. So very clever. Sad we've come to the end of an era. No more of your children to educate. All 3 of them have been a joy, and I wish there were more to teach. All my love." Isn't that the sweetest? That makes quilting for people just delightful. And not everybody has that background or experience or exposure to quilting to be excited about it. Or, I mean, I've even heard, "Thanks for the blanket." And it doesn't matter. I think it's an amazing thing to be able to share our quilty talents, and especially with teachers who give so much of their time and talent and energy to, educating and rearing these kids in a way that is positive and helpful. And, there's so much to those jobs, so much more than a great lesson plan. So anyway, that is the end of the Mickey quilt. I'm glad that you stuck with me. And now I'm going to go make myself a checklist of pieces of the adventure to not miss, like the final picture. It's fine. We all start somewhere, right?